The first fist came from behind. Master Chief Petty Officer Elena Vasquez felt the knuckle graze her temple before she had even finished closing her locker. 4 of them. She counted the boots, the breathing, the spacing between bodies, and the reflection of the metal door. The equipment room in Building 1405 was empty at this hour, which was exactly why they had chosen it. 45 seconds. That was how long she would give them before this became a lesson none of them would forget. But what these 4 recruits surrounding her in the shadows of Naval Station Great Lakes did not know, what nobody on this base knew, was that Elena Vasquez had spent 11 years in a world where 4 opponents was considered light duty. Before we continue with what happened next, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you have witnessed someone underestimated who turned out to be more than they appeared. The largest of them stepped forward. Petty Officer Second Class Derek Rawlings. She recognized his voice before she saw his face. Legacy Navy, father a captain, grandfather an admiral. The kind of man who believed the world owed him respect he had never earned. "You do not belong here," Rawlings said. His breath was hot against the back of her neck. "This program is for warriors, not diversity hires who got their position because someone needed to fill a quota." Elena did not turn around. She continued facing her locker, her hands steady, her breathing controlled. She had heard variations of these words in 7 different countries, in languages Rawlings would never learn to speak. The insults did not bother her. What bothered her was the waste. For young men who could become something meaningful. And instead they were here, in the dark, trying to intimidate a woman they knew nothing about. The second recruit moved to her left. She tracked him by the squeak of his boot on the concrete floor. The third positioned himself at her right, cutting off that escape route. The fourth hung back near the door. "Look out. Amateur formation." They had seen too many movies and not enough actual combat. "Turn around when someone is talking to you," Rawlings commanded. Elena turned. Slowly. She let her eyes move across each of them, cataloging details the way she had been trained. Rawlings was the strongest, but the slowest. The one on her left was nervous, his weight shifting constantly. The one on her right was the most dangerous of the 4 because he was calm, watching her with genuine curiosity rather than bravado. The lookout by the door was young, perhaps 19, and he looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. That one, the nervous one on the left. His name was Park. Thomas Park. She had noticed him during training, noticed the potential buried beneath his desperate need to belong. He had followed Rawlings, hoping to find acceptance. Instead, he had found this moment. She hoped he would remember it. "You have 30 seconds to leave," Elena said. Her voice was quiet, not threatening, simply factual. Rawlings laughed. The others joined him, though Park's laugh came half a second late. "Or what?" Rawlings asked. "You will report us?" "Go ahead. My father will have you transferred to a supply depot in Nebraska before the paperwork is even filed." 15 seconds, Elena said. The calm one on her right shifted his stance. He had noticed something, the way she was breathing, the way her weight had settled. He opened his mouth to warn Rawlings, but he was too late. Rawlings swung. Elena moved. 45 seconds later, all 4 of them were on the ground. She had not thrown a single punch. Joint locks, pressure points, precise manipulation of momentum. Rawlings was gasping, his shoulder wrenched at an angle that would ache for a week, but cause no permanent damage. The nervous one was curled in a fetal position, more frightened than hurt. The calm one was sitting against the wall, staring at her with an expression that had shifted from curiosity to something approaching awe. Park was on his knees, tears streaming down his face, though she had barely touched him. His tears were not from pain. They were from the sudden understanding that he had made a terrible mistake. She had not hurt any of them. Not really. She had simply shown them what hurt could look like if she chose to deliver it. The door to the equipment room opened. Light spilled in from the hallway, silhouetting a figure that Elena recognized immediately. Senior Chief Petty Officer Marcus Tomlinson. Former SEAL Team 4. Current senior instructor. A man who had spent 20 years in special operations and knew exactly what he was looking at. Tomlinson did not speak. He stood in the doorway, watching as Elena straightened her uniform. watching as the four recruits slowly gathered themselves from the floor. His eyes moved from her hands to her feet to the way she was breathing, and something in his expression changed. He recognized the techniques she had used. Not Navy techniques, not standard combatives. Something else entirely. Something that raised questions he was not sure he wanted answered. Rawlings found his voice first. "She attacked us," he said. "We were just talking and she—" Tomlinson held up one hand and Rawlings went silent. The senior chief looked at Elena for a long moment. She met his gaze without flinching, without explanation, without apology. "Get to medical," Tomlinson said to the recruits. "All of you. Do not speak to anyone about what happened here until I have had a chance to review the situation." The four of them limped toward the door. Rawlings paused as he passed Elena, his face twisted with humiliation and rage. "This is not over," he whispered. "My father will hear about this. You have no idea what you have started." Elena said nothing. She simply watched him go. When the room was empty except for the two of them, Tomlinson finally spoke. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked. "Training," Elena replied. "That was not training. That was something else." She did not respond. After a moment, Tomlinson nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. He turned and walked out of the equipment room without another word. Elena stood alone in the darkness for a long time. Then she reached in her locker and pulled out a small photograph. 8 people in unmarked uniforms, standing in front of a helicopter that bore no insignia. She touched each face with her fingertip, her lips moving silently as she spoke names that no official record would ever contain. "I am trying," she whispered to them. "I am trying to do this differently." She put the photograph away and closed her locker. That evening, before the confrontation, Elena had been walking through the base parking lot when she noticed a young woman sitting in an old sedan, crying. The woman wore the uniform of a seaman apprentice, and her sobs were the kind that came from a place of genuine desperation. Elena had approached carefully, asked if she was all right. The woman had explained through tears that her husband had been deployed unexpectedly, that their account had been drained by an automatic payment error, that she had no money for groceries and no family nearby to help. Elena had listened. Then she had reached into her wallet, pulled out $200, and pressed it into the woman's hand. Before the young sailor could even stammer her thanks, Elena had walked away. She did not want gratitude. She wanted the woman to eat. That was who Elena Vasquez was. A woman who would disable 4 attackers without breaking a sweat, and then give her last $200 to a stranger in a parking lot. A woman of controlled violence and quiet compassion. A woman with secrets that even Senior Chief Tomlinson was only beginning to suspect. That night, long after the base had gone quiet, Tomlinson sat in his quarters and picked up his phone. He dialed a number he had not used in 3 years, a number that connected to a world he had left behind. The voice that answered was cautious. "Marcus, it has been a while. I need a favor," Tomlinson said. "I need you to tell me everything you can about a Master Chief named Elena Vasquez. Specifically, I need to know what she was doing between 2015 and 2022. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "That information is not something I can just share," the voice said carefully. "Then find out if you can share it," Tomlinson replied. "Because I just watched her take down 4 men in 45 seconds using techniques I have only seen in one place. And if she is what I think she is, I need to know why she is here. And more importantly, I need to know who she is hiding from." He hung up the phone and stared at the wall, thinking about the woman who had stood in that equipment room with absolute stillness while 4 men tried to intimidate her. Thinking about the look in her eyes when she had turned around. Not fear, not anger, something else entirely. Patience. The patience of someone who had been in far worse situations and survived them all. Morning formation came with a sharp bite of Lake Michigan wind cutting across the training grounds. Elena stood at the edge of the assembly area, watching the recruits file into position. Her eyes found Rawlings immediately. Purple bruising spread across his jaw, and he moved with the stiffness of a man whose shoulder had been introduced to its limits. When the commanding officer asked about his injuries, Rawlings offered a tight smile and mentioned a training accident. Slipped during evening PT, landed wrong. The lie came so easily that Elena almost admired its efficiency. Almost. She noticed the way the other recruits looked at Rawlings now. Some with sympathy, others with barely concealed smirks. Word traveled fast on a military base, and while Rawlings had kept the official story clean, rumors had already begun their inevitable spread. For recruits went into the equipment room. For recruits came out limping. The female instructor walked out without a scratch. The morning assessment session was held in Training Building 7, a squat concrete structure that smelled of sweat and decades of young men and women pushing themselves beyond their limits. Elena took her position at the front of the room, 32 candidates arranged in rows before her. These are the hopefuls, the ones who dreamed of earning the right to attempt BUD/S election. Her job was to evaluate their readiness, to separate those who had potential from those who would break under the pressure that awaited them. She began with standard conditioning assessments. Push-ups, sit-ups, Fluderkicks. Nothing extraordinary. She moved between the rows, correcting form, noting performance, offering neither praise nor criticism, just observation. The recruits responded to her presence differently now. Some avoided her gaze entirely. Others watched her with open curiosity. A few, including the calm one from last night, whose name she had learned was Hendrix, studied her movements with the attention of someone trying to solve a puzzle. Rawlings made his presence felt throughout the session. Small things at first. A muttered comment when she passed. A deliberate delay in following her instructions. An exaggerated eye roll when she demonstrated proper technique. He was testing her, probing for weakness, trying to re-establish dominance after the humiliation of the previous night. Elena gave him nothing to work with. She acknowledged his small rebellions with the same neutral expression she offered everyone else. No anger, no frustration, no satisfaction. Just the steady patience of someone who had learned long ago that emotional reactions were a luxury she could not afford. During the hand-to-hand portion of the assessment, she demonstrated a basic takedown sequence. The movements were textbook Navy combatives. Nothing fancy, nothing that would raise questions. She could feel Tomlinson watching from the observation window above, his presence a constant reminder that her performance was being evaluated on multiple levels. Park struggled with the sequence. His technique was sloppy, his timing off. But beneath the poor execution, Elena saw something else. Raw potential waiting to be shaped. When she paused to correct his stance, she kept her voice low enough that only he could hear. "Your hips are the foundation," she said. "Everything else follows from there. Stop thinking about your hands and feel your center of gravity." Park nodded, his face flushed with embarrassment. He tried the technique again. Better this time. Not good, but better. Elena moved on without comment, but she filed the interaction away. This one might become something if he could find the courage to stop following men like Rawlings. The session ended at noon. As the recruits filed out, Rawlings lingered near the door. He waited until most of the others had left before approaching her. "That was quite a show," he said. "Very impressive. For a support instructor." Elena began collecting the training mats, her back to him. "Is there something you need, Petty Officer Rawlings?" "Just curious how someone with your background ended up teaching combat assessment. Your file says administrative support, supply logistics. Nothing that would qualify you for this position. Files do not always tell the complete story." Rawlings stepped closer. His voice dropped to something meant to be threatening. "My father has access to files that most people never see. Real files. If there is something in your background that does not match your cover story, he will find it." Elena turned to face him. She held his gaze for 3 full seconds before speaking. "Your father is welcome to look wherever he likes. Now, if you will excuse me, I have work to do." She walked past him and out the door, leaving him standing alone in the empty training room. That afternoon, Tomlinson found her in the instructor offices. He sat down across from her desk without invitation, his weathered face unreadable. "You handled that well this morning," he said. "Rawlings was trying to get under your skin. He is young. He will learn." "Will he?" Tomlinson leaned back in his chair. His father is Captain Vernon Rawlings. Pentagon connections. Old money Navy family. The kind of people who make problems disappear when their children are inconvenienced. I am aware. Are you also aware that the last two instructors who tried to hold Derek Rawlings accountable found themselves transferred to remote duty stations within 60 days? Elena said nothing. Tomlinson studied her for a long moment. Where did you serve before this assignment? He asked. My record is available for review. Your record shows 7 years of administrative postings. Supply depots. Logistics coordination. The kind of career that does not produce someone who can disable 4 attackers in under a minute using techniques I have only seen in Tier 1 operations. Elena met his gaze. Is there a question in there, Senior Chief? Several. But I get the feeling you are not going to answer any of them. She offered him nothing. After a moment, Tomlinson stood. I made some calls last night, he said. Your file is compartmented. I would need TS/SCI clearance just to see the index. That is not normal for a logistics coordinator, Master Chief. Perhaps I coordinated very important logistics. Something that might have been a smile flickered across Tomlinson's face. Perhaps you did. He walked to the door, then paused. Whatever you are, wherever you came from, you should know that I have been in this game long enough to recognize quality when I see it. And whatever happened in that equipment room last night, those 4 recruits needed to learn that lesson. I'm just curious why you held back. What makes you think I held back? Tomlinson looked at her with eyes that had seen 2 decades of special operations. Because if you had not held back, they would be in a hospital right now. Or worse. He left without waiting for a response. That night, Elena sat alone in her quarters. The base had gone quiet, the sounds of training replaced by the distant hum of Lake Michigan and the occasional footsteps of watch patrols. She reached in her desk drawer and pulled out the photograph. 8 faces looked back at her. 8 people who had trusted her with their lives. Her hand trembled as she touched the image. Not from weakness, from memory, from the weight of being the only one left. I am trying to do this right, she whispered to the faces in the photograph. I'm trying to build something instead of destroy. But they make it so hard. She sat with them for a long time, letting the silence wrap around her like a shroud. 300 miles away, in a Pentagon office that bore no nameplate, Captain Vernon Rawlings listened to his son's complaint with growing irritation. Derek's voice crackled through the phone, filled with wounded pride and barely contained rage. She humiliated me, Father, in front of everyone. This woman, this nobody, she needs to be removed. Captain Rawlings pulled up Elena Vasquez's service record on his computer. His eyes narrowed as he scrolled through the sparse details. Administrative support. Logistics. Nothing remarkable. Nothing that would explain what his son had described. Then he noticed the classification marker at the bottom of the file. A code he recognized. A code that meant the real information was stored somewhere else entirely. Somewhere even his clearance could not easily reach. Interesting, he murmured. Father, are you listening? I am listening, Derek, and I'm going to handle this. But I need you to be smart. No more confrontations. No more incidents. Let me work through proper channels. He ended the call and sat in the darkness of his office, thinking. Then he picked up his phone and dialed the direct line for the Great Lakes Base Commander. This is Captain Rawlings, he said. I am calling to request a formal review of instructor qualifications for your combat assessment program. Specifically, I have concerns about a Master Chief named Vasquez. The summons came at 0700. Lieutenant Commander Diana Okonkwo's office occupied the corner of Building 1000, overlooking the training grounds where recruits were already beginning their morning PT. Elena stood at attention before the commander's desk, her face betraying nothing of the tension coiling in her chest. Okonkwo was a striking woman in her mid-40s, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a regulation bun. She had risen through the ranks on merit alone, earning her position through 2 combat deployments and a reputation for fairness that bordered on legendary. The ribbons on her chest told stories of service that most officers only dreamed about. At ease, Master Chief. Okonkwo gestured to the chair across from her desk. Please sit. Elena sat. I received a call last night from Captain Vernon Rawlings at the Pentagon. Okonkwo's voice was measured, careful. He has requested a formal review of your qualifications for this assignment. I see. Do you have any idea why a captain with his level of influence would take personal interest in an instructor evaluation? Elena kept her expression neutral. I may have had an interaction with his son that did not go as the young man expected. Okonkwo studied her for a long moment. The incident in the equipment room. I have heard rumors. Rumors are often unreliable. These particular rumors suggest that 4 recruits attempted to intimidate you and found themselves significantly outmatched. Okonkwo leaned forward. Master Chief, I have reviewed your service record. Administrative support. Logistics coordination. Nothing that would explain how a supply specialist could allegedly disable 4 combat trained men in under a minute. Elena said nothing. The review will begin next week, Okonkwo continued. Until then, you are to continue your duties as normal. I would advise you to avoid any further incidents with Petty Officer Rawlings or anyone connected to him. Understood, Commander. Okonkwo's expression softened slightly. For what it is worth, I do not like being pressured by Pentagon politics, and I have learned to trust my instincts about people. My instincts tell me there is more to you than your file suggests. Elena rose to leave. At the door, she paused. Commander, if I may ask, what do your instincts tell you about Petty Officer Rawlings? Okonkwo's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. They tell me that some people are given opportunities they have not earned, and that eventually the bill comes due. Dismissed, Master Chief. The training grounds were alive with activity when Elena returned to her duties. She threw herself into the work, pushing the recruits through conditioning drills with a focus that left no room for distraction. The physical exertion helped quiet the noise in her mind. The familiar rhythm of commands and responses, of bodies straining against their limits, of potential being forged through sweat and determination. She noticed a shift in how some recruits regarded her now. The whispers had done their work. Where before she had been viewed with skepticism or dismissal, now there was something else. Curiosity, respect, perhaps even a trace of fear. She was no longer simply the female instructor who did not belong. She was something unknown, something that demanded caution. Park in particular seemed transformed. During the afternoon hand-to-hand session, he approached her with a hesitation that spoke of shame not yet fully processed. Master Chief. He kept his voice low. I wanted to say, about the other night. I should not have been there. I should not have been part of that. Elena continued arranging the training equipment without looking at him. Why were you there, Seaman Park? I thought. He struggled for words. I thought if I was part of his group, things would be easier. That I would fit in. And now I think I was wrong about what fitting in means. Elena paused her work. She turned to face him, seeing the genuine conflict in his young face. Fitting in is not about following the loudest voice in the room. It is about knowing who you are and finding people who value that. Do you understand? Park nodded slowly. Yes, Master Chief. Then show me. Not with words. With actions. She returned to her work, but something in her chest loosened slightly. One small victory, one potential life, turned from a dark path. It was not much, but it was something. The afternoon brought a practical assessment on the obstacle course. Elena positioned herself at the rope climb station, evaluating technique and timing as recruits struggled up the 30-foot ascent. Rawlings performed adequately, his natural athleticism carrying him through despite his injured shoulder. He made a point of meeting her eyes as he descended, his expression promising that their conflict was far from over. What happened next occurred in the span of 3 seconds. The recruit ahead of Rawlings, a young woman named Torres, had reached the top of the climb when the anchor point failed. The bolt sheared clean through, sending the rope and Torres plummeting toward the ground. Elena was 15 feet away, too far for any normal reaction time. She covered the distance in a blur. Her body moved without conscious thought, years of training taking over as she positioned herself beneath the falling recruit. She caught Torres in a controlled interception that redirected momentum rather than absorbing it directly, rolling them both across the ground in a technique designed to distribute impact force across multiple points of contact. Torres was shaken but unharmed. Elena helped her to her feet, already scanning the young woman for injuries. The whole incident had taken perhaps 4 seconds from failure to resolution. It was only then that Elena noticed the silence. Every recruit on the course had stopped. Every instructor had frozen. They were all staring at her with expressions ranging from disbelief to awe. What she had just done was not possible. Not for someone with her listed training. Not for anyone without years of specialized instruction in exactly the kind of rapid response techniques that were taught only in the most elite programs. Tomlinson was among the watchers. His face had gone carefully blank, but his eyes were sharp with recognition. Rawlings stood apart from the others. His expression was different. Not awe, not disbelief. Something calculating had entered his gaze. He was looking at Elena the way a hunter looks at prey that has suddenly revealed unexpected capabilities. That evening, Tomlinson found Elena in her quarters. She had been expecting him. "The rope anchor," she said before he could speak. "It did not fail on its own. I had the bolt examined." Tomlinson's voice was grim. Stress fractures consistent with deliberate weakening. Someone wanted that rope to fail. Torres could have been killed. Yes, but I do not think Torres was the target. I think someone wanted to see how you would react. Someone wanted to know what you really are. Elena turned to face him. And now they know. Now everyone knows. Tomlinson sat down heavily. "I received a partial response to my inquiry. Your file is not just classified, Master Chief. It is sealed by Joint Special Operations Command. The only people who get that designation are—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Elena looked out her window at the darkened base. Somewhere out there, Derek Rawlings was processing what he had witnessed. Somewhere in the Pentagon, his father was receiving reports. The careful anonymity she had built over 3 years was crumbling, and she was not sure she could stop it. Tomlinson stood to leave. "Whatever you were before," he said quietly, "whatever you did in those years your file does not show. I want you to know something. I spent 20 years in the teams. I have worked with operators from every branch, every country. And what I saw today, that reaction time, that technique, that is not something you learn. That is something you become. Whoever trained, you created something exceptional." Elena did not respond. At the door, Tomlinson paused. "Be careful, Master Chief. Rawlings is not going to stop. And now that he knows you are more than you appear, he is going to dig until he finds something he can use against you. Men like him always do." He left her alone with her thoughts and the weight of secrets she had carried for far too long. 3 people had noticed a reaction today. Tomlinson, who suspected but would not betray her. Torres, who was too shaken to analyze what had happened. And Rawlings, whose expression had shifted from contempt to something far more dangerous. Concern. The concern of a man who had just realized he might have picked a fight he could not win. And that kind of concern in a man with his connections could be more dangerous than open hostility. Derek Rawlings had never been a patient man. Patience was for people who lacked the connections to accelerate outcomes. But after what he had witnessed on the obstacle course, he understood that brute force alone would not be enough to remove Elena Vasquez from his path. He needed information. He needed leverage. He needed to know exactly what he was dealing with. The call to his father came at 2200, long after the base had settled into its nighttime rhythms. "I need you to dig deeper," Derek said. "Her service record is a cover. There's no way a logistics coordinator moves like that. No way she has those instincts." Captain Rawlings was silent for a moment. "I have already begun looking into her background. What I found is concerning." "Concerning how?" "Her file is sealed, Derek. Not just classified. Sealed by JSOC. Do you understand what that means?" Derek's grip tightened on his phone. "It means she is hiding something. It means she was part of something significant enough that the Joint Special Operations Command does not want anyone knowing about it. These are not people you antagonize carelessly. Whatever she did, whoever she worked with, they protect their own. So we just let her humiliate me. Let her walk around this base like she belongs here." Captain Rawlings exhaled slowly. "I'm telling you to be smart. Let me handle this through proper channels. The qualification review will give us opportunities to raise questions about her fitness for this position. We do not need to expose her past. We just need to create enough doubt about her present." Derek stared out his barracks window at the darkened training grounds. "And if that does not work, then we escalate. but carefully, methodically, not with the kind of reckless behavior that landed you in that equipment room in the first place. The call ended, but Derek's mind continued churning. His father counseled patience. His father advised caution. But his father had not been the one lying on that cold concrete floor, joints screaming, while a woman half his size stood over him without even breathing hard. That memory burned in ways that no strategic advice could cool. He would wait, for now, but he would also watch. And when the moment came, he would be ready. The following morning brought gray skies and a persistent drizzle that turned the training grounds into a muddy challenge. Elena conducted her sessions with the same measured professionalism she always displayed, but she felt the weight of observation pressing against her from multiple directions. Rawlings watched from a distance, his gaze tracking her movements with an intensity that had replaced his earlier contempt. Other recruits watched too, their curiosity sparked by the incident on the obstacle course. And somewhere above, she knew Tomlinson was watching as well. It was Tomlinson who found her during the lunch break, approaching the small table she had claimed in the corner of the instructor dining facility. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Elena gestured to the empty chair across from her. Tomlinson settled into the seat with the careful movements of a man whose body carried decades of hard use. For a long moment, he simply ate in silence, seemingly content to share space without demanding conversation. It was Elena who finally spoke. "You wanted to tell me something." Tomlinson set down his fork. "I wanted to share something, actually, a story, about a young petty officer who showed up at BUD/S in 1994 thinking he knew what hard looked like." Elena waited. "I was the only black man in my class," Tomlinson continued. "This was before the Navy got serious about diversity, before anyone cared about making people like me feel welcome. I had instructors who called me things I will not repeat. I had classmates who made it clear every single day that I did not belong, that I would never belong. Why are you telling me this? Because I made it through anyway, not by fighting every battle, not by proving myself to people who had already decided I was worthless. I made it through by being so good at what I did that my performance spoke louder than their prejudice." He met her eyes. "You're doing the same thing. I recognize it. The patience, the control, the refusal to give them ammunition." Elena looked down at her untouched meal. "It is not the same. No, it is not. Because whatever you are carrying, whatever those years did to you, it goes deeper than prejudice." Tomlinson leaned forward. "I lost friends in combat, Master Chief, good men who deserve to come home. I know what that weight feels like. And I know that teaching, training the next generation, it could be a way of honoring them, or it could be a way of hiding from the grief." Elena's jaw tightened. "You do not know anything about me. I know you talk to a photograph late at night. I know you move like someone who spent years expecting death from every direction. And I know that when Torres fell, you did not hesitate. Not because you were trained to respond, because protecting people is who you are." Tomlinson stood. "Whatever happened to your team, Master Chief, it was not your fault. And punishing yourself by staying small is not going to bring them back." He walked away, leaving Elena alone with words that cut closer to the truth than anything she had heard in 3 years. That evening, Park appeared at her office door. He stood at attention, his young face tight with nervousness. "Permission to speak freely, Master Chief." Elena set aside the evaluation forms she had been reviewing. "Granted." Park stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "What I said before about the equipment room, it was not enough. I need you to know the whole truth." Elena waited. Rawlings did not just want to intimidate you. He wanted to send a message to everyone on this base about what happens to people who do not fit his idea of who belongs. I went along with it because I was scared. Scared of being on the outside. Scared of being the target instead of the attacker. Park's voice cracked slightly. "My father was Navy. He died when I was 12. I joined because I wanted to honor his memory. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what honor actually means." Elena studied the young man before her. The shame in his posture. The genuine remorse in his eyes. She had seen many things in her years of service. She had learned to recognize the difference between performance and authenticity. What do you want from me, Seaman Park? Nothing. I do not deserve anything from you. I just needed you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, and that I am going to spend the rest of my time here, proving that I can be better. Elena rose from her desk. She walked to where Park stood and looked up at him with an expression that carried neither warmth nor coldness. Simply assessment. Proving it to me is meaningless, she said. Prove it to yourself. That is the only validation that matters. Park nodded slowly. Yes, Master Chief. After he left, Elena stood alone in her office, thinking about fathers and legacies and the weight of trying to honor the dead. She thought about Tomlinson's words, about hiding from grief, about staying small. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. She opened it and found a single sentence that made her blood run cold. I know about Phantom Ridge. 300 miles away, Captain Vernon Rawlings stared at his computer screen with growing unease. He had pushed his clearance to its limits, called in favors from contacts in intelligence circles, and finally obtained a summary of what Elena Vasquez's sealed file contained. Operation Phantom Ridge, a mission so classified that even the name was supposed to be unknown outside of a handful of senior officials. A mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. A mission with only one survivor. He picked up his phone and dialed his son. Derek, you need to stop. Whatever you are planning, whatever you think you're going to accomplish, you need to stop right now. Derek's voice came back defiant. Why? What did you find? I found enough to know that this woman is not someone you want as an enemy. She is not some diversity hire, Derek. She is a survivor of something that would break most operators. The people who trained her, the people who sent her on that mission, they do not forget their own. If you push her too far, you will not just be dealing with her. You will be dealing with them. I'm not afraid of her. Then you are a fool. Captain Rawlings' voice hardened. I'm telling you to stand down. Let the review process play out. Let me handle this. A long pause. Then Derek's response, cold and determined. No, she humiliated me, father, in front of everyone. I do not care who she was. I do not care who trained her. Tomorrow, during the combat assessment, I am going to prove that she does not belong here. And there is nothing you or anyone else can do to stop me. The combat assessment arena was a 40-foot square of padded flooring surrounded by observation bleachers. Every instructor on base had gathered. Every recruit in the selection program filled the seats. Word had spread that something was going to happen today, and the air crackled with the particular electricity that precedes confrontation. Elena stood at the edge of the mat, reviewing evaluation criteria on her clipboard. She felt the weight of dozens of eyes pressing against her, but she had learned long ago to function under observation. What concerned her was not the attention. It was the quality of it, the anticipation, the hunger for spectacle that had nothing to do with professional assessment. Rawlings entered the arena with the confidence of a man who believed he controlled the outcome. His shoulder had healed enough to allow full range of motion, and he moved with the athletic grace that had carried him through every physical challenge the Navy had presented. He was good. Elena had never denied that. But being good and being wise were different things entirely. The morning assessments proceeded without incident. Recruits demonstrated techniques, received scores, rotated through stations. Elena maintained her professional demeanor, offering corrections and evaluations with the same measured neutrality she always displayed. But she could feel Rawlings watching, waiting, choosing his moment. It came during the open demonstration period. Master Chief Vasquez. Rawlings' voice carried across the arena, silencing side conversations. I would like to request a clarification on proper defensive technique. Elena looked up from her clipboard. What specifically would you like clarified, Petty Officer Rawlings? The counter to a rear chokehold. I have seen conflicting instruction, and I think it would benefit everyone here to see the correct form demonstrated by our senior combat instructor. A murmur rippled through the bleachers. Everyone understood what was happening. This was not a request for instruction. This was a challenge. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo sat in the observation section, her expression unreadable. Tomlinson stood near the entrance, his body tense with the particular stillness of someone preparing for violence. The choice was Elena's. refuse and confirm the whispers that she lacked real combat credentials. Accept and walk into whatever trap Rawlings had prepared. She set down her clipboard and walked to the center of the mat. Very well. I will need a training partner to demonstrate. She scanned the assembled recruits. Petty Officer Hendricks, please join me. Rawlings stepped forward before Hendricks could move. I would be honored to assist, Master Chief. After all, this was my question. Elena held his gaze for 3 seconds. Then she nodded. Take your position. Rawlings moved behind her, his arms wrapping around her neck in a textbook rear chokehold. His grip was tighter than necessary for a demonstration. His breath was hot against her ear. Show them what you can do, he whispered, or admit you are a fraud. Elena's body knew what to do. Every instinct screamed at her to respond with the techniques she had spent 11 years perfecting. She could have him on the ground in 2 seconds, unconscious in 4, permanently damaged in 6. Her muscles remembered the movements the way her lungs remembered how to breathe. But she also knew what would happen if she did. Questions would be asked. Investigations would follow. The careful anonymity she had built would shatter completely. And the people who had sent that text message, whoever they were, would have confirmation of exactly what she was. She executed a standard Navy combative's escape. Textbook. Adequate. Nothing more. Rawlings released her and stepped back, his face splitting into a triumphant grin. That is the technique you wanted to demonstrate, Master Chief. He turned to address the crowd. As you can see, the standard escape requires precise timing, and he moved suddenly, launching a strike toward Elena's midsection, testing her, probing. She blocked. Again, textbook. Again, adequate. She could have countered with a dozen different responses that would have left him gasping on the mat. Instead, she simply deflected and stepped back. Rawlings pressed his advantage. A combination of strikes, each one faster than the last. Elena defended, but she did not attack. She gave ground, absorbing his aggression without responding in kind. To the untrained eye, it looked like she was struggling, like she was barely keeping up. Rawlings landed a glancing blow to her ribs. The impact was minor, but he made sure everyone saw it. Enough. Okonkwo's voice cut through the arena. This demonstration is concluded. Rawlings stepped back, breathing hard, but wearing an expression of pure satisfaction. He addressed the crowd with mock concern. I apologize if my enthusiasm was excessive. I simply wanted to ensure our recruits received proper instruction from qualified personnel. The implication was clear. Elena had failed to defend herself adequately. Elena had allowed him to land a hit. Elena, despite the rumors and the whispers, was exactly what her file claimed. A logistics coordinator playing at being a combat instructor. The rest of the assessment passed in a blur. Elena completed her duties mechanically, aware of the shifted energy in the room. The curiosity that had followed the obstacle course incident had curdled into something else. Doubt, disappointment, the quiet consensus that perhaps the rumors had been exaggerated after all. The formal complaint arrived within hours. Elena sat in Okonkwo's office, listening as the lieutenant commander read from the document. Concerns about instructor competence. Questions about qualification standards. A request for immediate administrative action, pending full review. Okonkwo set down the papers. This is clearly coordinated. Rawlings filed this complaint before the demonstration was even finished. He knew what he was going to see, Elena said quietly. Because he knew I would not fight back. Why? Okonkwo leaned forward. I have seen the reports from the equipment room. I saw what you did on the obstacle course. Why would you let him humiliate you in front of everyone? Elena was silent for a long moment. Because some victories cost more than they are worth. Okonkwo studied her with an expression that mixed frustration with something that might have been respect. I have no choice but to place you on administrative leave pending the review. You understand that? I understand. Master Chief. Okonkwo's voice softened. Whatever you are protecting, whatever secrets you are keeping, I hope they are worth what this is costing you. Elena rose to leave. At the door, she paused. Commander, when I first arrived here, you said you trust your instincts about people. Do you still? Okonkwo met her gaze. My instincts tell me that what I saw today was was a woman choosing not to destroy a man who desperately deserved it. My instincts tell me that takes more strength than any combat technique. She paused. Yes, Master Chief. I still trust my instincts. The base chapel was empty at 2300. Elena sat alone in the back pew, the photograph clutched in her hands. 8 faces looked up at her in the dim light. 8 voices echoed in her memory. I am trying, she whispered to them. I'm trying to do this without becoming what they made me, without using the skills you died teaching me. But they keep pushing. They keep testing. And I do not know how much longer I can hold back. She traced each face with her fingertip. Rodriguez, Chun, Kowalski, Oduya, Franklin, Yamamoto, Reeves, Martinez, her team, her family, the people who had trusted her to lead them into hell and bring them back. She had failed them. One catastrophic mission, one ambush they never saw coming, one desperate week of survival that had ended with her carrying encrypted intelligence out of hostile territory while their bodies remained behind. You deserve better, she told them. You deserve a leader who could save you. Instead, you got me. And now all I can do is try to make sure the next generation is better prepared than we were. The chapel door opened behind her. Footsteps approached slowly, deliberately. Park's voice was barely above a whisper. Master Chief, I thought you might be here. Elena did not turn around. How did you know? Because this is where I come when I need to talk to my father. Park slid into the pew beside her. I heard what happened today. I heard what Rawlings is saying. It does not matter what he says. It matters to me. Park's voice cracked with emotion. You could have destroyed him. Everyone knows it now. The way you moved on that obstacle course, the way you handled us in the equipment room. You're something special, something none of us have ever seen. And today you let him win because fighting back would have cost you something more important than pride. Elena finally looked at him. The young man's face was earnest, open, filled with a conviction that reminded her painfully of the people in her photograph. You do not owe me anything, Park. No, but I owe myself the chance to become someone worth being. Park stood. Whatever happens with this review, Master Chief, I want you to know that some of us see the truth. Some of us know what real strength looks like. He left her alone with her ghosts and the weight of secrets she could no longer carry by herself. The call came at 0600. Tomlinson's contact had finally delivered. Marcus. The voice on the other end was grave. I got you what you asked for, but I need you to understand something before I share it. What I am about to tell you does not officially exist. The operation was scrubbed from every database. The personnel involved were given cover identities. If you repeat any of this to anyone without proper clearance, both of us will face consequences neither of us wants to imagine. Tomlinson gripped the phone tighter. Understood. Tell me. The next 15 minutes changed everything he thought he knew about Elena Vasquez. Operation Phantom Ridge. June 2019. A joint special operations mission into territory so hostile that even acknowledging its location remains classified. The objective was extraction of intelligence assets who had penetrated a network planning attacks on American soil. The team consisted of 9 operators drawn from multiple Tier 1 units. The best of the best, hand-selected for a mission that could not fail. It failed. The ambush came 3 days into the operation. Someone had betrayed them. The team was surrounded, outgunned, cut off from extraction. 8 operators died over the following 72 hours, fighting a running battle through terrain that offered no mercy. Only one survived. A woman who spent 6 days evading enemy forces while carrying encrypted intelligence that ultimately prevented 3 coordinated attacks on American cities. Elena Vasquez did not just survive Phantom Ridge. She completed the mission. Alone, wounded, carrying the weight of 8 friends she could not save. When the briefing ended, Tomlinson sat in silence for a long time. Then he stood, put on his jacket, and went to find the woman who had carried this burden in secret for 3 years. He found her in her quarters. She was sitting on her bed, staring at the photograph she always kept hidden. She did not look up when he entered. You know, she said. It was not a question. Tomlinson closed the door behind him. I know enough. Then you know why I cannot fight back. Why I cannot let them see what I really am. The people who betrayed my team were never caught. Someone with access to classified operations sold us out. And whoever they are, they're still out there. Still watching. Still waiting to see if I will surface. The text message, Tomlinson said, I know about Phantom Ridge. Elena nodded slowly. Someone knows I am here. Someone wants me to know they are watching. If I reveal my capabilities, if I draw attention to myself, I become a target again. And this time, there might not be anyone left to protect. Tomlinson moved to sit beside her. He looked at the photograph in her hands. 8 faces, 8 lives, 8 reasons why Elena Vasquez had chosen to let a privileged bully humiliate her rather than risk exposing herself. Tell me about them, he said quietly. Elena's composure cracked for the first time since he had known her. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Rodriguez was the youngest, 23. He used to sing mariachi songs during long operations to keep morale up. Chen was our medic. She had a daughter back home who she talked about constantly. Kowalski was the biggest man I have ever known, but he cried during sad movies and never tried to hide it. She continued through each name, each story, each life that had been cut short in a foreign wilderness while she watched helplessly. The tears came slowly at first, then faster, until she was sobbing with the grief she had held inside for 3 years. Tomlinson did not try to stop her. He did not offer platitudes or false comfort. He simply sat beside her and let her mourn. When the tears finally subsided, he spoke. You have been protecting people who do not deserve your protection. Rawlings is not worth shielding. Elena wiped her eyes. I'm not protecting him. I am protecting myself from becoming what I was. The person who completed Phantom Ridge, the person who survived when everyone else died, she did things that still wake me up at night. I told myself that teaching was a way to honor my team. But maybe I was just hiding. Maybe I was afraid that if I let that part of myself out again, I would not be able to put it back. Or maybe, Tomlinson said, you were afraid that you would discover you were still that person. And that being that person is not something to be ashamed of. Before Elena could respond, a knock came at the door. Tomlinson opened it to find Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo standing in the hallway, a folder clutched in her hands and an expression of barely contained anger on her face. We need to talk, Okonkwo said. All 3 of us. Now. They gathered around Elena's small desk. Okonkwo spread the contents of the folder across the surface. Documents, transfer orders, performance reviews, a paper trail that painted a damning picture. I started digging after the demonstration, Okonkwo explained. Something about this entire situation felt wrong. Rawlings has been at this base for 11 months. In that time, 3 instructors who evaluated him negatively have been transferred or reassigned. I tracked down 2 of them. Both received sudden orders within weeks of filing critical assessments. Captain Rawlings, Tomlinson said, his fingerprints are all over this. Phone calls to base commanders. Recommendations to promotion boards. Quiet conversations with people who control assignments. Okonkwo's jaw tightened. One of those instructors, a lieutenant named Hernandez, was discharged on false charges. Conduct unbecoming. The evidence was fabricated. I found the original documentation buried in an archive that someone forgot to purge. Elena looked at the papers spread before her. This is not just harassment. This is systematic corruption. It goes higher than I initially suspected, Okonkwo confirmed. Captain Rawlings has been manipulating his son's career for years. Every obstacle removed. Every competitor eliminated. Every evaluation adjusted. Derek Rawlings has never faced a genuine challenge in his entire military career because his father made sure he never had to. Tomlinson picked up one of the transfer orders. This is enough to end careers. If we can prove it. That is the problem. Okonkwo gathered the documents. Most of this is circumstantial. The people involved are either too scared to talk or too compromised to be credible witnesses. We need someone who was present for the misconduct. Someone willing to testify. Elena thought of Park, of the shame in his eyes when he confessed his role in the equipment room attack, of the conviction in his voice when he found her in the chapel. I might know someone, she said. Okonkwo met her gaze. Are you sure? Because once we start down this path, there is no turning back. Captain Rawlings will not go quietly. He He will use every resource at his disposal to destroy anyone who threatens his son's future. Elena looked at the photograph, still sitting on her bed. 8 faces looking back at her. 8 voices urging her forward. My team did not go quietly either, she said, and they were fighting for something that mattered. This matters too. These recruits deserve instructors who evaluate them honestly. They deserve a system that rewards merit instead of connections. They deserve better than what the Rawlings family has been giving them. Tomlinson nodded slowly. Then we fight. Okonkwo straightened. I will continue building the case. Senior Chief, I need you to reach out to your JSOC contacts. See if anyone is willing to provide a character reference for Master Chief Vasquez. Something that establishes her credibility without revealing classified details. And me, Elena asked. Okonkwo looked at her with something approaching admiration. You prepare yourself, Master Chief, because when this hearing happens, you're going to have to show them who you really are. Not all of it, but enough. Enough to make them understand that Derek Rawlings picked a fight with the wrong woman. Elena stood. For the first time in 3 years, she felt something besides grief and caution. She felt purpose. There is more, Okonkwo said quietly. I did not want to mention this until I was certain. But the corruption is not limited to career manipulation. I found evidence that Captain Rawlings has been steering training contracts to companies where he holds financial interests. We're not just talking about a father protecting his son. We're talking about fraud, possibly criminal conspiracy. The weight of those words settled over the room. If we expose this, Elena said slowly, we are not just ending careers. We are potentially sending a decorated officer to prison. Okonkwo nodded. Are you still willing to fight? Elena looked at her photograph one last time. Rodriguez, Chung, Kowalski, Oduya, Franklin, Yamamoto, Reeves, Martinez. They had died fighting for something important. Now was her turn. Yes, she said. I am ready. The Alliance gathered in Okonkwo's office at 0500 before the base stirred to life. 3 people united by purpose, separated by rank, but bound by a shared understanding that what they were about to attempt could end all of their careers. Tomlinson spread a map of the situation across Okonkwo's desk. We have 72 hours before the formal review hearing. Captain Rawlings has already arranged for a sympathetic hearing officer. Commander Briggs. They served together on the USS Reagan 15 years ago. Okonkwo nodded grimly. I know Briggs. He owes his current position to a recommendation letter Rawlings wrote. He will not be impartial. Then we need evidence strong enough that impartiality does not matter, Elena said. We need testimony that cannot be dismissed or discredited. The room fell silent. They all knew what that meant. They needed someone from inside Rawlings' circle. Someone who had witnessed the harassment firsthand. Someone willing to risk everything to tell the truth. I will talk to Park, Elena said. Tomlinson shook his head. It is too dangerous. If Rawlings finds out Park is cooperating with us, he will destroy that kid's career before the hearing even begins. Park has already made his choice. Elena's voice was firm. He came to me in the chapel. He told me he wants to become someone worth being. This is his chance to prove it, but I will not force him. It has to be his decision. Okonkwo stood and walked to her window. The first gray light of dawn was creeping across the training grounds. There is something else we need to discuss. The classified nature of your background, Master Chief. We cannot reveal operational details, but we need something that establishes your credibility. Something that explains why your file is sealed without exposing information that could endanger ongoing operations or personnel. Tomlinson leaned forward. I've already reached out to my JSOC contacts. There is a 3-star admiral named Morrison who was briefed on Phantom Ridge. He is retired now, but he remembers the operation. He remembers what Master Chief Vasquez accomplished. He has agreed to provide a statement. Elena felt something shift in her chest. She had spent 3 years hiding from her past. Now that past was reaching forward to defend her. What kind of statement? She asked. Tomlinson met her eyes. Enough to establish that you're not a logistics coordinator. Enough to make clear that anyone questioning your combat qualifications is questioning the judgment of Joint Special Operations Command. He paused. He also wanted me to give you a message. What message? Tomlinson's voice softened. He said your team will be proud of you. He said Phantom Ridge was supposed to break you, and instead you completed the mission. He said the Navy needs more people like you, not fewer. Elena turned away, blinking back tears she refused to let fall. She had carried the weight of that mission alone for so long. Hearing that someone else remembered, that someone else honored what her team had sacrificed, cracked something open inside her that she had kept carefully sealed. That evening, Elena found Park in the base library. He was studying technical manuals, his face drawn with concentration. When he saw her approach, he straightened immediately. Master Chief, is everything all right? Elena sat down across from him. I need to ask you something, Seaman Park. And I need you to understand that whatever you decide, it will not change my opinion of you. This has to be your choice. Park set down his manual. What do you need? Elena explained the situation. The hearing, the evidence they had gathered, the need for testimony from someone who had witnessed Rawlings' behavior firsthand. She laid out the risks clearly. Career repercussions, social isolation, the possibility that Rawlings' connections could follow him for years. Park listened without interruption. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. My father, he said finally, was a chief petty officer. He served for 22 years. When I was young, I asked him what the Navy meant to him. He said it meant being part of something bigger than yourself. He said it meant standing up for what was right even when it cost you something. Park looked at Elena with eyes that had aged years in the past week. He died of cancer when I was 12. But before he died, he made me promise that if I ever joined the Navy, I would serve with honor. Real honor. Not the kind that comes from connections or politics. The kind that comes from doing the right thing. He stood up and gathered his materials. I will testify, Master Chief, not because you asked me to, because it is the right thing to do, and because my father would be ashamed of me if I did not. Elena watched him go, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more heavily on her shoulders. This young man was putting his future in her hands. She could not afford to fail him. Later that night, Tomlinson found Elena sitting alone on the bleachers overlooking the training grounds. The base was quiet, the only sound the distant lap of Lake Michigan against the shore. Mind if I join you? He asked. Elena gestured to the space beside her. Tomlinson sat down with a grunt, his aging joints protesting the cold metal. You carry them with you everywhere, he said. Your team. I can see it in the way you move, the way you watch over these recruits. You are still their leader, even though they are gone. Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she began to speak. Oduya was from Nigeria originally. He joined the military to earn citizenship, but he stayed because he believed in what we were doing. He used to say that America was not perfect, but it was worth fighting for, worth dying for if it came to that. She continued through each name, sharing details she had never spoken aloud to anyone. Franklin had a sister with Down syndrome. He sent half his paycheck home every month to help pay for her care. Yamoto was the quietest operator I ever knew, but when he spoke, everyone listened. He had this way of cutting through noise and finding the truth. Rees was our point man. He had eyes like a hawk and reflexes like nothing I have ever seen. He saved my life twice before Phantom Ridge. I could not save his once. Martinez was the one who made me believe I could lead. When I doubted myself, when I thought I was not ready, he looked me in the eye and said that the team did not follow me because I was perfect. They followed me because I cared about them more than I cared about myself. Tomlinson listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat in silence for a long moment. They sound like extraordinary people, he said finally. They were. Elena's voice was barely a whisper. And I've spent 3 years wondering why I survived when they did not. Wondering if I deserved to. Tomlinson turned to face her. You survived because you were strong enough to keep going when everything fell apart. You completed the mission because that is who you are. Not someone who gives up. Not someone who lets sacrifice be meaningless. He put a hand on her shoulder. Your team died protecting something important. Honor them by living, by fighting, by being the person they believed you could be. Elena looked at the photograph in her hands. 8 faces, 8 friends, 8 reasons to keep moving forward. The moment was shattered by Elena's phone buzzing. A message from Okonkwo. Emergency meeting. Now, Rawlings has filed new charges. They found Okonkwo pacing her office, her face tight with barely contained fury. He has accused you of inappropriate conduct, she said. With a recruit. With Park. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. That is completely false. I know it is false. But Rawlings has submitted a formal complaint alleging that you have been engaging in an inappropriate relationship with Seaman Park. He claims that your private meetings, your conversations in the chapel, your extra instruction sessions, were all cover for misconduct. Tomlinson slammed his fist against the wall. This is fabricated. Anyone who has seen them interact knows there is nothing inappropriate happening. It does not matter what we know. Okonkwo's voice was grim. It matters what can be proven. And right now, Rawlings has created enough doubt to completely derail our case. If this accusation stands, Master Chief Vasquez will not just be removed from her position. She will be court-martialed. Elena sank into a chair, the weight of the accusation crushing down on her. Captain Rawlings had made his move, and if they could not find a way to counter it, everything they had built would crumble to dust. 48 hours. That was all the time they had to dismantle a lie designed to destroy Elena Vasquez completely. The first 24 hours were a blur of coordinated effort. Okonkwo worked the administrative channels, gathering documentation and identifying witnesses who could speak to Elena's professionalism. Tomlinson burned through every contact he had in the special operations community, securing statements and building a picture of Elena's true credentials. Elena herself was confined to quarters, prohibited from contact with recruits, pending investigation of the misconduct allegations. She spent the hours alone with her thoughts and her photograph, waiting, preparing, running through scenarios in her mind the way she had once run through mission briefs. Park faced his own battle. Word of his involvement in the upcoming hearing had spread through the recruit barracks with the speed of wildfire. Some of his fellow candidates regarded him with respect. Others, those who had aligned themselves with Rawlings, treated him as a traitor. The confrontation came on the second evening. Park was returning from the dining facility when three figures stepped out of the shadows between buildings. Hendricks was among them, along with two other recruits whose names Park barely knew. They blocked his path with the casual menace of men who believed they held all the power. Heard you were planning to testify against Rawlings, Hendricks said. That is not a smart move, Park. Park stood his ground. What I do is my business. See, that is where you are wrong. Hendricks stepped closer. Rawlings has friends. Important friends. The kind of friends who can make your career very short and very painful. You really want to throw away your future for some instructor who does not even belong here. Park thought about his father, about the promise he had made at a hospital bedside 12 years ago, about the woman who had shown him what real strength looked like. Master Chief Vasquez belongs here more than any of us, he said, and I am not throwing away my future. I am building one I can be proud of. Hendricks grabbed Park's collar. You are making a mistake. No. Park's voice was steady. The mistake was following Rawlings in the first place. The mistake was thinking that belonging to his circle made me somebody. I am done making that mistake. He pulled free from Hendricks' grip and walked away. The three recruits did not follow. Something in Park's eyes had told them that this was not the same frightened young man who had followed Rawlings into that equipment room. This was someone who had found something worth standing for. Tomlinson's efforts bore fruit on the morning of the second day. Admiral Morrison's statement arrived via secure transmission, carrying the weight of 3 decades of special operations authority. The statement was careful, revealing nothing classified, while making clear that Master Chief Elena Vasquez had served with distinction in operations of the highest sensitivity. It noted that her combat credentials had been reviewed and verified by Joint Special Operations Command. It concluded with a single devastating sentence. Any individual or institution that questions this officer's qualifications does so in direct contradiction of the judgment of those who have witnessed her service firsthand. Okonkwo added the statement to their evidence file with something approaching hope. This changes things, she said. Briggs may be sympathetic to Rawlings, but he cannot dismiss a statement from a 3-star admiral without destroying his own credibility. The false accusation remained their greatest vulnerability. Without direct evidence proving the allegation was fabricated, it would hang over the hearing like a poisonous cloud. It was Park who provided the breakthrough. He appeared at Okonkwo's office that afternoon, clutching a phone with trembling hands. "I recorded it," he said, "the night before the demonstration." Rawlings was in the barracks, talking to his father on speakerphone. He did not know I was in the next room. He did not know these walls are thin enough to hear through. Okonkwo took the phone and pressed play. Derek Rawlings' voice filled the room, arrogant and confident. "She's going to crack tomorrow. I'm going to push her until she either fights back or proves she cannot. Either way, she loses." Captain Rawlings' voice responded. "And if she does not crack, if she maintains her composure, then we go to plan B. I will file something that makes it impossible for her to stay. Maybe claim she came on to me, or one of the other recruits. Something that cannot be disproven." The recording continued for another 2 minutes, laying out in explicit detail the plan to fabricate allegations against Elena Vasquez. Okonkwo stopped the playback. Her hands were shaking. "This is it," she said. "This is everything we need." Tomlinson clapped Park on the shoulder. "You just saved her career, son. Maybe her life." Park shook his head. "She saved mine first. In that equipment room, she could have hurt us, really hurt us. Instead, she just showed us what we were up against. She gave me a chance to be better. This is me taking that chance." The final hours before the hearing passed with agonizing slowness. Elena reviewed her statement, rehearsing the words she would use to defend herself without revealing too much. Tomlinson coordinated with Admiral Morrison's staff, ensuring the statement would carry maximum impact. Okonkwo prepared the evidence file, organizing documentation into a narrative that would be impossible to dismiss. At 1900, a black sedan pulled through the main gate of Naval Station Great Lakes. Captain Vernon Rawlings had arrived. Elena watched from her window as the captain emerged from the vehicle. He was tall, distinguished, wearing his dress uniform with the easy confidence of a man who had spent 30 years accumulating power. He paused at the entrance to the administrative building, scanning the base with eyes that missed nothing. For a moment, his gaze seemed to find her window. Even at this distance, Elena felt the weight of his attention. This was the man who had orchestrated the destruction of multiple careers, the man who had shaped his son into a weapon of privilege and entitlement, the man who believed that rules applied only to those without connections. Tomorrow, she would face him. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. Her phone buzzed. A message from Okonkwo. "Final briefing. My office. Now." Elena found the others already gathered. The tension in the room was palpable. "We have a problem," Okonkwo said. "I just received confirmation that Commander Briggs will be presiding over the hearing as scheduled. But there is more." She paused, gathering herself. "Briggs had dinner with Captain Rawlings tonight, at the captain's invitation. They were seen leaving the officers' club together an hour ago." Tomlinson swore under his breath. "He is coordinating with them, right out in the open. It gets worse." Okonkwo pulled up a document on her computer. "I did some digging into Briggs' background. 3 years ago, he was facing serious allegations of misconduct during a deployment. Those allegations disappeared. The investigating officer was reassigned. The witnesses recanted. And 6 months later, Briggs received a glowing recommendation letter from Captain Vernon Rawlings." Elena stared at the screen. "He owns him. Briggs owes his entire career to Rawlings." "Which means tomorrow's hearing is not a hearing at all," Tomlinson said grimly. "It is a show trial. The verdict has already been decided." Silence fell over the room. Everything they had worked for, every piece of evidence they had gathered, every risk they had taken, none of it would matter if the person judging their case had already been bought. Elena looked at her allies, at Okonkwo, who had risked her own position to fight this corruption, at Tomlinson, who had opened doors she could never have reached alone, at Park, who had found the courage to stand against everything he had once believed in. "Then we changed the audience," Elena said quietly. Okonkwo frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean Briggs can only protect Rawlings if the hearing stays contained, if it stays quiet. But what if it does not stay quiet? What if the people who need to know about this corruption find out before Briggs can bury it? Tomlinson leaned forward. You're talking about going outside the chain of command. I'm talking about doing whatever it takes to make sure the truth comes out. Elena's voice hardened. My team died because someone betrayed them to protect their own interests. I will not let that happen again. Not to Park. Not to the instructors Rawlings destroyed. Not to anyone else. She looked at each of them in turn. Tomorrow morning, we walk into that hearing, and we burn it all down. The hearing room in Building 1000 had been arranged to project authority. Commander Briggs sat elevated behind a polished wooden desk, his expression carefully neutral, but his eyes betraying the confidence of a man who already knew the outcome. Captain Vernon Rawlings occupied a seat in the front row, his dress uniform immaculate, his posture radiating the quiet power of 3 decades of accumulated influence. Derek Rawlings sat beside his father, wearing the satisfied expression of someone who believed victory was assured. Elena entered in her service dress blues, flanked by Tomlinson and Okonkwo. Park followed behind them, his young face pale but determined. The gallery held a dozen observers, mostly administrative personnel, and a few senior instructors. Among them, Elena noticed Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo had positioned several people she did not recognize. Witnesses, perhaps, or something else entirely. This hearing will come to order. Briggs' voice carried the weight of rehearsed authority. We are here to review allegations of misconduct against Master Chief Petty Officer Elena Vasquez, as well as counter-allegations of harassment filed against Petty Officer Second Class Derek Rawlings. He shuffled papers with practiced efficiency. We will begin with the testimony of the complainant. Derek Rawlings rose and approached the witness position with the easy confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore his oath, and began to speak. Master Chief Vasquez arrived at this command with credentials that did not match her capabilities, he said. From my first interaction with her, I noticed discrepancies between her listed qualifications and her actual performance. When I attempted to address these concerns through proper channels, she became hostile and confrontational. He continued for 10 minutes, weaving a narrative that painted Elena as incompetent, aggressive, and inappropriately fixated on him personally. He described the equipment room incident as an unprovoked attack. He characterized her restraint during the demonstration as evidence of her inadequacy. He presented the false allegations of misconduct with Park as the reluctant conclusion of a concerned fellow sailor. Captain Rawlings watched his son with barely concealed pride. This was the moment they had engineered. This was the performance that would end Elena Vasquez's career. When Derek finished, Briggs nodded approvingly. Thank you for your testimony, Petty Officer Rawlings. He turned to Elena. Does the respondent wish to cross-examine? Elena rose. She kept her voice level, her questions precise. She asked Derek to clarify the timeline of events. She asked him to explain why 4 recruits had been present in an empty equipment room after hours. She asked him to describe, specifically, what unprovoked attack he claimed she had committed. Derek's answers grew less confident as the contradictions in his story became apparent. He stumbled over details. He contradicted earlier statements. He glanced repeatedly at his father, seeking reassurance that was not forthcoming. But Briggs intervened before the damage could accumulate. I think we have heard enough on this point. He cut off Elena's questioning with administrative efficiency. Let us move to the next witness. Park approached the witness, stand with the weight of everything he was about to sacrifice pressing down on his shoulders. He swore his oath and began to speak. I was one of the 4 recruits in that equipment room, he said. I was there because Derek Rawlings told me that if I wanted to succeed in this program, I needed to show loyalty to him. He said Master Chief Vasquez did not belong here and that we were going to make sure she understood that. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Briggs' expression tightened. Park continued, describing the confrontation in detail. The ambush, the threats, the way Elena had neutralized all 4 of them without causing serious injury. The way Rawlings had promised that his father would destroy her career if she reported what happened. He described the harassment that followed, the undermining during training sessions, the sabotaged rope on the obstacle course, the coordinated campaign to question her credentials. And then he described the night before the demonstration. I heard Derek Rawlings talking to his father on the phone, Park said. He was planning to provoke Master Chief Vasquez during the assessment. He said if she fought back, they would use it against her. And if she did not fight back, they would claim she was incompetent. Either way, she would lose. Briggs leaned forward. These are serious allegations, Seaman Park. Do you have any evidence to support them? Park pulled out his phone. I recorded the conversation. The room went silent. Captain Rawlings' composed expression flickered for the first time. Derek's face drained of color. Briggs recovered quickly. Recordings made without consent are not admissible in. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo stood. Commander Briggs, I would like to note for the record that under military regulation, recordings made of conversations involving potential criminal conspiracy are admissible when they serve the interests of justice. She held up a folder. I have documentation of the relevant precedents if you would like to review them. Briggs hesitated. His eyes darted to Captain Rawlings, seeking guidance. But before anyone could respond, Okonkwo pressed a button on her phone. Derek Rawlings' voice filled the room, arrogant and unmistakable. She's going to crack tomorrow. I'm going to push her until she either fights back or proves she cannot. Either way, she loses. Captain Rawlings' voice followed. And if she does not crack, if she maintains her composure, then we go to Plan B. I will file something that makes it impossible for her to stay. Maybe claim she came on to me, or one of the other recruits. Something that cannot be disproven. The recording played for 2 full minutes. Every word was damning. Every sentence revealed the calculated cruelty of a father and son who believed they were untouchable. When it ended, the silence in the room was absolute. Briggs' face had gone pale. He understood now that this was not the controlled proceeding he had been promised. This was exposure. This was the moment when everything he had helped cover up was about to come crashing down. He cleared his throat. This hearing will take a brief recess while Senior Chief Tomlinson stood. Before we recess, Commander, there is one more piece of evidence that needs to be entered into the record. Briggs glared at him. This is highly irregular. So, is presiding over a hearing where the outcome was predetermined before testimony began. Tomlinson's voice was ice. I have a statement from Admiral James Morrison, United States Navy, retired. 3 stars. 32 years of service, including 15 in Special Operations Command. He pulled out his phone and dialed. The room waited in tense silence until a voice answered. Admiral Morrison, this is Senior Chief Tomlinson. I have you on speaker in the hearing room. Would you please read your statement for the record? The Admiral's voice filled the room, steady and commanding. I am providing this statement in support of Master Chief Petty Officer Elena Vasquez. During my tenure at Joint Special Operations Command, I was briefed on operations in which Master Chief Vasquez participated. The details of those operations remain classified. What I can say is that her service record reflects courage, capability, and sacrifice that few will ever understand. Her combat credentials have been reviewed and verified at the highest levels of military authority. Any individual or institution that questions this officer's qualifications does so in direct contradiction of the judgment of those who have witnessed her service firsthand. The Admiral paused. I would add a personal observation. The Navy does not have enough leaders like Elena Vasquez, and it has far too many people like those who are trying to destroy her today. The call ended. Tomlinson sat down. Captain Rawlings was on his feet. This is outrageous. This hearing has become a circus. I demand that, Commander Briggs. Elena stood. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Captain Rawlings. She waited until every eye in the room was on her. Your son asked me a question during that demonstration. He wanted to know what I really am. He wanted to see what I could do. She stepped forward, her presence suddenly filling the room in a way it had not before. The restraint she had worn like armor for 3 years began to fall away. I am Master Chief Petty Officer Elena Vasquez. I have served this country in operations that will never be acknowledged. I have 17 confirmed kills in theaters you will never read about. I have watched 8 of the finest warriors I have ever known die while I survived. And for the past 3 years, I have dedicated my life to training the next generation so that fewer of them die. She turned to face Derek Rawlings directly. You wanted to know what I am. I am the woman who could have ended your career in that equipment room. I am the woman who could have broken you during that demonstration. I am the woman who held back, not because I was afraid, but because destroying you was not worth becoming what I left behind. She looked at Captain Rawlings. You want to question my qualifications? Question them. The room had gone completely still. Elena stood in the center of that silence, feeling the weight of every eye upon her. For 3 years, she had hidden behind a cover story, behind paperwork and routine and the careful anonymity of someone who wanted to disappear. Now she was stepping into the light, and there was no going back. Captain Rawlings found his voice first. This is absurd. 17 kills. Classified operations. You expect us to believe that a logistics coordinator. I expect nothing from you, Captain. Elena's voice was steady, controlled, carrying the authority of someone who had faced far worse than a Pentagon politician. But I will tell you what I know. I know that your son orchestrated an attack against me in that equipment room. I know that when that failed, you began a campaign to have me removed through administrative channels. I know that you have done this before to at least 3 other instructors who dared to evaluate your son honestly. She turned to address the room. I held back during that demonstration because fighting Derek Rawlings was not worth revealing what I am capable of. I held back because the mission I gave myself when I took this assignment was to train the next generation of warriors, not to destroy a privileged young man who has never faced real adversity. She paused, but I see now that holding back was a mistake. Not because I should have hurt him, but because my silence allowed him to hurt others. She looked at Park, at the young man who had risked everything to tell the truth. Seaman Park came to me in a chapel, ashamed of what he had been part of. He told me he wanted to become someone worth being. That is what an instructor is supposed to create. Not blind followers, not political allies. Warriors with integrity. Warriors who stand up for what is right even when it costs them something. The door to the hearing room opened. 3 more recruits entered, led by Torres, the young woman Elena had saved on the obstacle course. They approached the witness area with the nervous determination of people who had made a difficult decision. Torres spoke first. Permission to provide testimony, Commander. Briggs looked like a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse. He glanced at Captain Rawlings, but the captain's attention was fixed on Elena with an expression that had shifted from contempt to something approaching fear. Granted, Briggs said weakly. Torres stepped forward. I saw what happened on that obstacle course. The rope that failed had been sabotaged. I did not say anything at the time because I was afraid. But Master Chief Vasquez saved my life that day. She moved faster than anyone I have ever seen. If she had not caught me, I would be dead or paralyzed. The second recruit, a young man named Okonkwo, no relation to the lieutenant commander, spoke next. Rawlings approached me 2 weeks ago. He said if I wanted to succeed in this program, I needed to stay away from Master Chief Vasquez. He said anyone who supported her would find their evaluations suddenly getting worse. I have in writing. Text messages. The third recruit, a woman named Chun, added her voice. He said the same thing to me. And when I told him I would not play politics with my career, he threatened to have his father make sure I never made it past E4. One by one, they painted a picture of systematic intimidation, of a young man who believed his family connections made him untouchable, of a father who had spent years clearing every obstacle from his son's path. When the testimonies concluded, Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo rose from her seat. Commander Briggs, before you render any judgment in this matter, I need to inform you that I have forwarded all evidence gathered in this investigation to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. She let that sink in. The evidence includes documentation of career interference, falsified evaluations, and what appears to be a pattern of fraud related to training contracts awarded to companies with financial ties to Captain Rawlings. Captain Rawlings shot to his feet. You have no authority to. I have every authority, Captain. Okonkwo's voice was ice. I am a commanding officer of training operations on this base. When I discover evidence of criminal activity affecting my command, I am obligated to report it. That is exactly what I have done. She turned to Briggs. I'm also aware, Commander, that your own history with Captain Rawlings may create the appearance of bias in these proceedings. I have recommended to NCIS that your role in this matter be reviewed as well. Briggs' face went white. He looked at Captain Rawlings, at the evidence scattered across the proceedings, at the witnesses who had come forward. The careful structure of protection and patronage that had served him for years was crumbling in real time. This hearing is concluded, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. On what grounds? Elena asked. Briggs could not meet her eyes. All charges against Master Chief Vasquez are dismissed. The allegations of misconduct are unfounded. He swallowed hard. Petty Officer Rawlings is hereby removed from the selection assessment program, pending further investigation. Derek Rawlings lunged forward. You cannot do this. My father will. Your father, Okonkwo interrupted, is about to have much bigger problems than your career. Captain Rawlings stood frozen, decades of accumulated power suddenly meaningless. He looked at his son, at the hearing officer who could no longer protect him, at the woman he had tried to destroy. Elena met his gaze without flinching. You spent 30 years building a system that protected your son from consequences, she said quietly. You destroyed careers. You fabricated evidence. You taught him that rules do not apply to people like him. She shook her head. That is not leadership, Captain. That is corruption. And it ends today. The room began to empty. Recruits filed out, many of them pausing to look at Elena with new understanding. They had watched her hold back for weeks. They had seen her take abuse without responding. Now, they understood what they had been witnessing. Not weakness, not incompetence, discipline. The discipline of someone who could have destroyed her enemies but chose restraint instead. Tomlinson approached her as the room cleared. How do you feel? Elena considered the question. She thought about the months of harassment, the false accusations, the moment in the chapel when she had spoken to her dead team and wondered if she was doing the right thing. I feel like I honored them, she said finally. Rodriguez, Chun, Kowalski, all of them. They did not die so I could hide. They died protecting something that mattered. And today, I protected something that matters too. Park lingered near the door, uncertain. Elena walked over to him. You did well today, she said. Your father will be proud. Park's eyes glistened. Thank you, Master Chief, for everything. She put a hand on his shoulder. This is not an ending, Seaman Park. This is a beginning. You have shown what kind of person you can be. Now you have to keep showing it. Every day, for the rest of your career. He nodded and walked out, standing a little taller than he had before. Okonkwo approached last. NCIS will want to interview you, she said. Your testimony about the harassment will be important to the investigation. I understand. Okonkwo hesitated, then spoke again. I want you to know something. When you first arrived at this command, I had doubts about you. Your file did not match what I was seeing. She met Elena's eyes. I should have trusted what I was seeing instead of what I was reading. You are one of the finest instructors I have ever served with. And I am sorry it took this long for me to say that. Elena accepted the words with a slight nod. She did not need apologies. She needed the work to continue. Outside, the sun was setting over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Elena stood alone on the steps of Building 1000, breathing in the cold air, feeling something she had not felt in 3 years. Peace. Not the peace of hiding, the peace of being seen. The days following the hearing brought a strange kind of quiet to Naval Station Great Lakes. The machinery of military justice ground forward with its own momentum. Investigators arriving from Washington. Interviews conducted behind closed doors. Paperwork accumulating in files that would determine the fate of careers built over decades. Elena returned to her duties with the same measured professionalism she had always displayed. But something had shifted in the way people regarded her. The skepticism was gone. The whispered doubts had been replaced by something else entirely. Respect, earned not through revelation of her classified past, but through the demonstration of her character under fire. The selection assessment program continued. Recruits trained, competed, proved themselves worthy, or found their limits. Elena evaluated them with the same exacting standards she had always maintained, But now her corrections were received differently. When she spoke, they listened. When she demonstrated, they studied. When she pushed them to their limits, they understood it was because she knew exactly what those limits could become. Park distinguished himself in ways that surprised everyone except Elena. His scores improved steadily across every metric. His leadership in group exercises drew notice from senior instructors. When the final rankings were posted, his name appeared in the top 5 of his cohort. She found him studying the results board, his expression caught somewhere between disbelief and pride. "You earned this," she said, approaching from behind. Park turned. "I keep thinking about what you said, about proving it to myself." He shook his head. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I actually did something that matters. Something that was mine." Elena allowed herself a small smile. "This is just the beginning, Seaman Park. Bud/S will test you in ways you cannot imagine. But you have shown that you have the foundation. The rest is up to you." He straightened, squaring his shoulders. "I will not let you down, Master Chief. Do not worry about letting me down. Worry about letting yourself down. That is the only standard that matters in the end." She left him standing at the board, already preparing himself for the challenges ahead. Some seeds, once planted, grew stronger than anyone expected. Tomlinson found her that evening in the instructor offices, completing the paperwork that never seemed to end regardless of what dramas unfolded around it. "Got a minute?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. Elena set down her pen. "For you always." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. The same card the man in civilian clothes had given her after the hearing. A phone number and nothing else. "You gonna tell me what this is about?" Tomlinson asked. Elena took the card, turning it over in her fingers. "After Phantom Ridge, I was approached by people who wanted me to continue operational work. Different unit, different mission profile. I turned them down. I was not ready to lead anyone into danger again. And now," she considered the question carefully, "now I'm not sure. Part of me wants to stay here, keep teaching, keep building the next generation. But another part of me knows that hiding behind a training billet is not what my team would have wanted for me." Tomlinson leaned forward. "What do you want?" Elena looked at the photograph on her desk. 8 faces looking back at her, frozen in a moment before everything changed. "I want to honor them," she said. "I want to make sure their sacrifice meant something. And I'm starting to think that might mean stepping back into the world I left behind." Tomlinson nodded slowly. "Whatever you decide, you know you have people here who believe in you. People who will support you." "I know, and that means more than you understand." The knock at her door interrupted the moment. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo entered, carrying a folder that looked official even by military standards. "Am I interrupting?" she asked. Tomlinson stood. "I was just leaving." He paused at the door. "Think about what I said, Master Chief." When he was gone, Okonkwo took his seat. She placed the folder on Elena's desk. "I wanted to deliver this personally," she said. "Orders came through this morning." She paused. "I have been authorized to offer you a permanent position here at Great Lakes. Senior Combat Instructor. You would have authority over the entire assessment program. Full autonomy to implement whatever training protocols you believe will best prepare candidates for what they will face." Elena opened the folder, scanning the documents inside. It was everything she had thought she wanted when she first accepted this assignment. Stability, purpose, a chance to shape the next generation without putting herself back in harm's way. "There is more," Okonkwo continued. "The investigation into Captain Rawlings has expanded. NCIS found evidence of financial impropriety going back at least 5 years. He has been relieved of duty pending court-martial. His son has been separated from the Navy entirely. Failure to meet standards officially. But everyone knows the real reason." Elena closed the folder. "And Commander Briggs, early retirement, strongly encouraged." Okonkwo's expression carried grim satisfaction. "The system worked, Master Chief. Slowly, imperfectly, but it worked. Because people were willing to stand up. People like you, like Tomlinson, like Park, like you," Okonkwo corrected. "None of this would have happened if you had not been willing to fight. If you had just accepted the transfer, let them push you out, the corruption would have continued. Other instructors would have been destroyed. Other recruits would have learned that connections matter more than character. Elena sat with that truth for a long moment. She had spent 3 years believing that the best way to honor her team was to fade into the background, to teach quietly and avoid drawing attention. Now she understood that honor sometimes required standing in the spotlight, even when the light revealed wounds you would rather keep hidden. "I need time to think about the offer," she said finally. Okonkwo nodded. "Take whatever time you need. The position will be here when you are ready." After Okonkwo left, Elena gathered her things and walked across the darkened base to the chapel. The building was empty at this hour, the pews silent, the altar illuminated by soft light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. She sat in the back row, the photograph in her hands. 8 faces, 8 friends, 8 reasons why she had survived when logic said she should have died with them. "I have been carrying you for 3 years," she said softly. "Carrying your memory, carrying my guilt, carrying the weight of being the one who made it out." She traced each face with her fingertip, speaking their names like a prayer. Rodriguez, Chun, Kowalski, Oduya, Franklin, Yamamoto, Reeves, Martinez. "You trusted me to lead you," she continued. "And I failed. I cannot save you. I cannot bring you home. All I could do was finish the mission and spend every day since wondering why I was the one who survived." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but her voice remained steady. "But I understand something now that I did not understand before. You did not die so I could hide. You did not sacrifice everything so I could spend the rest of my life punishing myself for surviving. You want me to live, to fight, to be the leader you believed I could be." She pressed the photograph to her heart. "I'm not going to carry the guilt anymore. I'm going to carry your memory instead. Your courage, your loyalty, your belief that some things are worth dying for. And I'm going to make sure the people I train understand what that really means." She sat in the silence for a long time, letting the peace of the empty chapel wash over her. When she finally rose to leave, something had changed. The weight she had carried for 3 years had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something she could bear, something that gave her strength instead of stealing it. Outside, the stars burned cold and bright above Lake Michigan. Elena looked up at them and smiled. "I am ready," she whispered to the darkness. "Whatever comes next, I am finally ready." 6 months later, the world looked different from where Elena Vasquez stood. The training facility in Virginia had no official name. It appeared on no public maps. The men and women who trained here would never speak of it to anyone outside these walls. This was the place where operators were forged, where the exceptional became elite, where the skills Elena had spent 11 years perfecting were passed to those who would carry them into the shadows. She had made the call 3 days after the chapel. The voice on the other end had simply said, "We have been waiting for you." Now she stood at the front of a classroom filled with 12 candidates, each of them already proven in combat, each of them hungry to become something more. They looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism she had come to expect. A woman, average height, unassuming appearance. Nothing about her suggested the things she had done, the places she had been, the enemies she had faced and defeated. That would change soon enough. "My name is Master Chief Vasquez," she said. "I am here to teach you how to survive, and to fight, and to come home, because the people who love you are waiting." She let those words settle over them. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others met her gaze with the steady focus of professionals ready to learn. "Before we begin, I want to tell you about 8 people. Their names were Rodriguez, Chun, Kowalski, Oduya, Franklin, Yamamoto, Reeves, and Martinez. They were my team. They were the finest operators I have ever known. And they died because we walked into a situation we were not prepared for." She moved to her desk, where 2 photographs now sat in plain view. The first showed 8 faces frozen in time, standing before an unmarked helicopter. The second showed her current class, taken during their orientation 3 days ago. I survived that mission. I completed the objective, and I spent 3 years wondering why I was the one who made it out. She looked at each candidate in turn. "I'm not here to make you feel sorry for me. I am here to make sure you never have to ask that question." I am here to give you every tool, every technique, every piece of knowledge that might be the difference between coming home and being carried home. She stepped onto the training floor. So let us begin. The morning passed in a blur of instruction and demonstration. Elena pushed them hard, harder than their previous training had prepared them for. She showed them techniques they had never seen, approaches to combat that existed in no official manual. She answered their questions with patience and their mistakes with correction. And slowly, she watched their skepticism transform into the same thing she had seen at Great Lakes. Respect, understanding, the recognition that they were learning from someone who had earned every word she spoke. During the lunch break, her phone buzzed with a message from Tomlinson. Thought you would want to know. Park made it through Hell Week. Top of his class. Kid is going to be something special. Elena smiled at the screen. She typed back a simple response. He already is. Tomlinson had received his own promotion 2 months ago. Senior Chief Tomlinson was now Master Chief Tomlinson, overseeing SEAL instructor programs across multiple commands. They spoke regularly, their friendship forged in the crucible of those weeks at Great Lakes, now a permanent part of both their lives. Another message arrived, this one from Okonkwo. Court-martial concluded. Captain Rawlings received 12 years. Derek has been reassigned to Surface Fleet. Different ship, different command. Word is he has been keeping his head down. Maybe learning something. Elena considered that news. She had not followed the Rawlings case closely, preferring to focus on her new mission rather than dwelling on old conflicts. But she found herself hoping, against expectation, that Derek Rawlings might find his way to becoming something better than his father had made him. People could change. She had seen it happen. Park was proof of that. The afternoon session focused on close-quarters combat. Elena demonstrated techniques that drew murmurs from even these experienced operators. She moved through sequences that should have been impossible for someone her size, using leverage and precision to neutralize opponents twice her mass. When the session ended, one of the candidates approached her, a young lieutenant named Okonkwo, coincidentally sharing a name with a woman who had helped save Elena's career. Master Chief, permission to speak freely. Granted. The young woman hesitated, then pressed forward. I read about you. Not the classified stuff, obviously, but the story about what happened at Great Lakes. How you held back against those recruits. How you let them think you were weak rather than revealing what you could do. Elena waited. I guess I'm wondering why. Why not just show them from the beginning? Why let them underestimate you? Elena considered the question. It was the same question she had asked herself many times. Because power is not about what you can do, she said finally. It is about what you choose to do. Anyone can destroy. The discipline is in deciding when destruction serves a purpose and when it does not. She met the young lieutenant's eyes. Those recruits in that equipment room did not need to be destroyed. They needed to be shown that they had made a mistake. One of them, the one who learned that lesson, is now on his way to becoming a SEAL. If I had heard him, truly heard him, that future would have been lost. The lieutenant nodded slowly. So restraint is a form of strength. Restraint is the highest form of strength. Elena glanced at the photograph of her old team. My people understood that. They knew when to fight and when to wait. They knew that the mission was always bigger than any individual moment of pride or anger. That is what I am here to teach you. Not just how to win fights. How to know which fights are worth winning. The day ended with the candidates exhausted but energized. Elena watched them file out of the training facility, already seeing the potential in each of them. Some would wash out. Others would exceed every expectation. All of them would carry something of what she taught them into whatever darkness awaited. She stayed behind after they left, standing alone in the empty training room. The evening light filtered through high windows, casting long shadows across the mats where she had spent the day shaping the future. Her phone buzzed one final time. A message from a number she did not recognize. Phantom Ridge files have been unsealed for internal review. Your team is being recommended for posthumous recognition. Names to be added to the memorial wall at Langley. Thought you should know. Elena read the message 3 times. Then she walked to her desk and picked up the photograph of her team. 8 faces looked back at her, frozen in a moment of confidence and camaraderie, unaware of what awaited them. You're going to be remembered, she told them. Not by the public, but by the people who matter. The people who understand what you gave. She placed the photograph back on her desk, next to the image of her current class. Old team and new. Past and future. Loss and hope. The door opened behind her. Her candidates had returned, gathering for an optional evening session she had mentioned in passing. They stood in the doorway, waiting for permission to enter. Elena looked at them. 12 faces. 12 lives she was now responsible for shaping. 12 reasons to keep moving forward. She thought about Park, surviving Hell Week, becoming the warrior his father would have been proud of. She thought about Tomlinson, using his new position to make sure instructors like her received the support they deserved. She thought about Okonkwo, continuing to fight corruption wherever she found it. She thought about Derek Rawlings, possibly learning that character mattered more than connections. And she thought about her team. Rodriguez, Chun, Kowalski, Odia, Franklin, Yamamoto, Reeves, Martinez. 8 people who had believed in her. 8 people whose sacrifice had meaning because she was still here, still fighting, still teaching others how to survive. Come in, she said to her candidates. We have work to do. They filed onto the training floor, ready to learn, ready to be shaped into something extraordinary. Elena took her position at the front of the room. 45 seconds, she said. That is how long it takes to change everything. A fight, a decision, a moment of courage or cowardice. Your entire life can pivot on 45 seconds. She looked at each of them in turn. I'm going to teach you how to make those seconds count. If this story moved you, drop a comment about what resonated most with you. Tell us about someone in your life who proved everyone wrong. Or share if you have ever witnessed hidden strength in someone others underestimated. We would love to hear your story.